He thought they hired him for his skills. He thought this case would make his career. But by the time he realized the truth, that he was chosen to take the fall, it was almost too late. Can he turn the tables and beat a white billionaire real estate mogul at his own game? New York City, early morning. Carter and Miles, LLP, 28th floor. Jamal Carter didn't expect the call. Not this early and certainly not from a senior partner. He was still nursing a cup of gas station coffee when his office phone buzzed. Mr. Carter, the receptionist's voice cracked through. Mr. Aldridge wants to see you. Now. Jamal froze for a moment. He glanced down at his suit, navy, a little wrinkled from last night's late prep, but decent enough. He grabbed his legal pad, straightened his tie, and walked the long hallway with 1,000 unspoken expectations pressing on his shoulders. The boardroom door was already open. For men in tailored suits sat inside. The view behind them showed Manhattan wrapped in pale sunlight. In the center of the table sat Gregory Langford, real estate mogul, billionaire, and tabloid favorite, drumming his fingers on the table and gritting his teeth. Jamal's breath caught. Langford didn't stand. He just gave a small smirk, eyes scanning Jamal top to bottom like he was an auction item. This is the one. Langford asked the room. Aldridge nodded. Jamal's one of our brightest. Top of his class. Knows his way around a courtroom. Langford's voice was smooth and confident. And black. That'll play well in the press. An uncomfortable silence engulfed the room. Jamal stood still, fazed by the commentary from Langford. He heard it, clear as day. It sounded like a test, like a warning. He smiled politely. I'm not here to play. I'm here to win. Langford's grin widened. Then you just might survive this, he said, still grinning. The door clicked shut behind him, but Langford's voice still echoed in Jamal's ears. He didn't stop walking until he reached the elevator. Inside, he exhaled sharply, leaned against the mirror-paneled wall, and loosened his tie. His reflection stared back, young, clean-cut, calculating. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his mom that read, "Good luck today, baby. Proud of you always." Below that, a photo of her and his younger brother, Malik, grinning from their tiny kitchen in Bed-Stuy. Malik had just gotten out a halfway house. 2 years clean. Jamal typed back, "Thanks, Ma. I'll call later." The elevator doors opened into the lobby, but the weight on his chest didn't lift. It never really did. His mind wandered back to the night after his 17th birthday, when he was rounded up, guns drawn, and made to put his hands up against a squad car. After an eternity of searching, harassing, and questioning, it turned out his identity was mistaken. That was the night he decided to become a lawyer. That night, he understood what it meant to be invisible and a threat. That night, he knew the system didn't protect people like him. It tested them. In the present, he stepped into the chill of the New York morning. The city roared around him. Cabs honked. Suits shuffled past. He pulled his coat tighter and muttered to himself, "Brightest, not safest." Then he walked toward the courthouse. His name was about to be on headlines, and he wasn't sure yet if that was a win or a warning. The Langford case was already a media circus. Gregory Langford, real estate titan and political donor, stood accused of siphoning city redevelopment funds and laundering money through a maze of shell companies. He called it a smear campaign. The tabloids called it white-collar Armageddon. Jamal was given full access to files, statements, a corner office with a view, and an intern who looked like he had walked straight out of Yale. But something felt curated. It was all too smooth. He dug in any way, examining deposits, transaction records, and statements from whistleblowers who had mysteriously retracted their claims. On the surface, the paper trail was tight. Impossibly tight. No slip-ups. No cracks. For all his arrogance, Jamal had built his career on spotting mistakes, and Langford had left none. That alone was suspicious. Late one night, he stayed back, reviewing documents in the plush legal suite. A custodial worker, an older black man named Reggie, passed through. "You're the new blood on Langford's case, huh?" Reggie said, pausing with his mop. Jamal looked up. "Yeah, you know anything I should?" Reggie smirked. "I know that man's hands ain't clean. And I know whenever someone goes digging too deep, they either get bought off or buried." Jamal tried to laugh it off, but something about how Reggie said it stuck with him. The next morning, at Jamal's apartment in the city's heart, the city was just waking up. Sirens blared in the distance. Cold sunlight shone through half-drawn blinds. Jamal sipped black coffee from a chipped mug, scanning the Langford files again, but there were still no gaps. Just perfection, and that was the problem. He heard his intercom buzz as he ran his fingers through his hair. He frowned. He wasn't expecting anything. Downstairs, a man in a navy jacket handed him a thin manila envelope. There was no name, no return address, just his apartment number scrawled in blocky handwriting. He climbed back upstairs slowly, envelope in hand, instincts flaring. Back in the apartment, he closed the blinds and sat at the kitchen table. Carefully, he peeled the flap open. Inside was a prepaid burner phone, a folded newspaper clipping of Langford's recent indictment circled in red ink, and a short, handwritten note on torn notebook paper. The letters are uneven and rushed. He unfolded it, and it had just one line: "They picked you for a reason. Don't let them bury you." Jamal's pulse quickened. He reread the line, and that's when he knew this wasn't just a high-profile case. This was a setup, and someone out there didn't want to see him fall quietly. Over the next few days, Jamal balanced two investigations, the one he was paid for and the one that now kept him up at night. He started with the tip. The burner phone had no contacts and no call history. But after hours of backtracking and digital digging, he traced the newspaper clipping's red ink pattern, and it matched an old case file from a whistleblower lawsuit Langford had settled out of court 5 years ago. Then he discovered the plaintiff had died in a car accident 2 months later. If this was a coincidence, Jamal didn't believe in them anymore. So something had to be going on. Meanwhile, Langford played the gracious client. Charming, commanding, always in control. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Jamal," he'd say with that practiced politician smile. "Not a lot of your kind make it this far. I admire that." Jamal smiled back, but his blood boiled every time Langford said, "You're kind." He wasn't sure if Langford's racism was passive or deliberate until he overheard a conversation outside the boardroom one night. Langford, visibly angry, yelled at his assistant, "Get the kid to sign off on the filings. That's why we hired him. He's hungry. He won't ask questions." Startled, his assistant asked, "And if he does?" Langford chuckled and replied, "Then he'll learn what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you." Jamal froze behind the hallway column, bile rising in his throat. That night, he went home and reviewed every document again, this time not looking for Langford's guilt anymore, but looking for his name. He needed to know where they'd tagged him and trapped him. And he found it, hidden deep in an internal memo, buried in legal jargon. A signature block already filled with Jamal Rivers, ESQ, authorized a transfer from a shell company tied to foreign accounts. A move is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. They weren't just using him to defend Langford. They were setting him up to fall with him. And worse, Langford's legal team had sealed off full access to certain files, citing privileged material. When Jamal protested, they reminded him he was lucky to be trusted with this opportunity. He wasn't paranoid anymore. Now he was sure he was in danger. But he wasn't alone. That night, the burner phone buzzed again. A message came in: "Meet me. Midnight. Battery Park." Midnight. Battery Park. Just after 10 p.m., Jamal stepped into the underground parking lot beneath his firm's building. The silence was heavy, and every footstep echoed like a warning. The burner phone buzzed again. "Loading. Bay." Now he hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution, but he followed. It was now or never. He needed to know what's waiting for him. At the loading bay, a black SUV was parked under a flickering light. The passenger door opened. A woman stepped out. Slim build, black trench coat, braids tucked into a wool hat. She looked like she'd lived 100 lives and escaped each one. "You're late," she said flatly. "You didn't give a time," Jamal replied, guarded. "You're the one who wants to survive." She handed him a flash drive. "You're not the first Langford tried to burn. You're just the first who's pushing back." Inside the SUV, she showed him documents, emails, financial records, and audio clips. It was a vault of dirty secrets, linking Langford to everything from international fraud to domestic bribery. One file had Jamal's name attached, framed into a bogus transaction trail designed to collapse once Langford needed a scapegoat. Then she played the audio file. It was muffled at first, then Langford's voice, arrogant, controlled. Rivers? He's ambitious, hungry. He'll do what I tell him. And when the heat comes, he'll take the fall. Young, black, desperate for a win, they'll eat it up. Jamal felt the floor tilt under him. That wasn't a strategy. That was systemic evil, planned, packaged, and ready to be delivered. Southern District Federal Court day of trial. Jamal sat at the defense table, wearing the same tailored suit he had worn on his first big case, but it felt heavier now. Langford, seated beside him, radiated cold confidence. The billionaire leaned over and whispered, "Stay sharp, Jamal. You represent me now." If only he knew what was about to hit him. Outside, media vans circled. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. This wasn't just any trial. It was the government versus one of the wealthiest men in the country. And Jamal, the black newbie, was his attorney. It was really a good look for Langston with the press. The trial finally began, and the prosecution opened with damning evidence: financial irregularities, shell corporations, bribery across continents. Jamal rose to speak. The world expected him to do what he was hired to do: defend the billionaire, shield him, and clean up his mess. But what the court didn't know, and Langford never imagined, was that Jamal now had a choice. When he heard the audio clip from last night, the plan had been clear. Let Jamal take the blame when the heat rose. The evidence planted pointed towards him. A brilliant black attorney, ambitious, eager. The perfect scapegoat. It was a ticking time bomb, a matter of time. Jamal inhaled slowly. Then, to everyone's shock, he reached into his case file. "Your Honor," he said, "before I continue, I respectfully request to be removed as counsel on the grounds of conflict of interest and personal endangerment. Additionally, I have new evidence that must be submitted immediately." Langford's smile cracked. "What the hell are you doing?" Jamal turned to him. "Steady. Saving my life. And putting an end to yours." He handed the drive to the judge's clerk. The courtroom erupted in confusion, and Langford's legal team scrambled. But it was too late. The audio played, and the paper trail followed. And Langford's ultimate setup was exposed. And Jamal? He didn't run. He watched as federal agents stood, approached Langford, and read him his rights. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. After Jamal exposed the falsified evidence and the internal memos tying Langford Corp. To the bribery and environmental violations, the judge had no choice but to halt proceedings. He ordered a recess and called for a federal investigation into Langford's legal team and executive board. Langford sat stone-faced, but his eyes betrayed him, darting, cornered, afraid. Jamal had flipped the script. He wasn't a fall guy. He was the fuse. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as reporters swarmed. Jamal ignored them. He was done performing. By the evening, federal agents raided Langford's headquarters, making arrests. The documents Jamal submitted triggered an avalanche. In his private office, now surrounded by agents in windbreakers and guns at their hips, Edward Langford finally understood the cost of underestimating the man he tried to frame. He had thought Jamal would fold, that his skin, his background, and his hunger for approval would make him pliable. But Jamal had cracked open the truth with precision. He had dismantled years of corporate rot with the calm fury of a man who knew this was never just about a case. It was about history, justice, and a system that needed a reckoning. Langford's hands were cuffed behind his back. His lawyers had disappeared. His allies stopped answering his calls. As he was led down the hallway past the portraits of Langfords who came before him, all steel-jawed and arrogant, the weight of his family names suddenly felt like a curse. He had tried to use a black man to clean his dirt, and that same man had burned his empire to the ground. Later that night, Jamal stood in his small kitchen, still wearing his suit, with his tie undone. He poured himself a glass of water with shaking hands. The burner phone buzzed. A text came in again. "You did good. We didn't think you'd make it, but you did." He'd never know who sent the tip, never know how deep the setup went. But he knew one thing. He still had his name. And that meant everything. Later, at his mother's apartment in the Bronx, she opened the door and hugged him hard. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You fought back." He looked at her, then at the photo of his late father on the shelf, a man who never got a fair trial. "I didn't just fight for me," Jamal said. "I fought for every one of us they thought was disposable." For Jamal, it wasn't just a win in court, but a stand. A declaration that brilliance can't be bought, truth doesn't kneel, not even a power, and certainly not skin color. If this story gave you chills or made you think twice about judging people by appearances, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.